Thank you for listening today on Revealing Wholeness, sponsored by Infinity Whole Health. Check out our website at infinityWholeHealth.com, where we are revealing the eternal in each individual, the infinite in the individual. The creativity is made manifest. Limitation is let go. Now, here's your host, Dr. Troy Munson.
Hello and welcome. I'm Dr. Troy Munson at Infinity Whole Health and on our podcast, Revealing Wholeness. You know, I get questions, and I even just had a client asking me, because all kinds of confusion around vitamin D. And they came in and say, hey, I don't know what to do. I mean, some people are saying you have 5,000 international units. Some say I take 20,000. Some say shouldn't take any at all. Some say that, hey, in the wintertime, you should only take it. Some say, hey, above the 35th parallel, you should take it all year round. What's all this stuff out there? Now, again, I've talked about vitamin D in the past, and some of the things are still solid. And I want to hash some of those things, because vitamin D itself is, I don't like the term vitamin for it. Vitamin D is not a vitamin. A vitamin is something that we consume that then goes to tissues to make them work like they're supposed to. But the definition of a hormone is a chemical produced in one cell tissue and goes and has an effect on another cell tissue. And that is what vitamin D actually does. And so let's say that you have the average person out there that can't sleep. And so they take melatonin. Well, why don't they want to take melatonin all the time? Once you take a hormone over and over, your body says, well, if you're just going to give me that hormone, I'm not going to make any more at all. And so now we become dependent on that hormone. The other problem is that we don't know exactly when the cells produce the hormones and in what balance they produce them. And so hormones become a tricky business that you really don't want to go down that trail if you don't have to. So do foods have some vitamin D's in them? Yes, they do. Just like some foods have estrogen in them, or progesterone, or a little bit of testosterone-like substances. And so it's not that we do not see hormone-like substances in foods, but, you know, people say, well, there's vitamin D and all kinds of things like fish oil and cod liver oil. Well, I get it, but ultimately there are hormone-like substances everywhere. And just because we call it vitamin D doesn't magically not make it do something in the body that maybe perhaps is not so wise. So when we see vitamin D levels in a blood test, I take that with a grain of salt, so to speak. And I tell my clients this, that I'm not going to stare at their vitamin D levels and call them good, bad, and different, especially when we actually produce way more than, if you ask people out there, how many vitamin Ds do we produce? Well, I thought it was only one. And I might quiz them a little bit and say, well, have you heard of D2 and then D3? Which one's better? And everybody say, well, D3 is better. Well, okay, so if there's at least D2 and D3, there's probably a D1. Well, believe it or not, there's over 50 vitamin Ds that we now make in our skin. And they're made by the fact of the sun hitting our skin and turning the oils into our skin into the vitamin D that our body needs. And so that's why I hate to even call it vitamin D. I mean, what do you call it when there's 50 different types of D? I guess if we just call it that, we could call them hormones. But ultimately, our body is deciding what's best, and it's doing what it needs to do, and it's producing what it needs to produce. That's the way we're designed. So I want to go with that design as much as humanly possible when I work with clients. I'm not here just to give catastrophic doses of vitamin D. Yes, we know that it is important, and I will tell you that in January, February, I am taking a small amount of vitamin D in a completely natural form. I'm not worried about it being D3 or D2. I'm taking it from a food source. When I do that, I'm more confident about my body's ability to utilize it if it needs it, or just kick it out and not do anything with it. And so I would say most of the research I read says, hey, 1,200 milligrams, international units of vitamin D is way, way plenty. I got clients doing 5,000, 10,000. I think that is way too much. And I tell them why it's way too much, in my opinion, because in New Zealand, like I talked about the last time I talked about vitamin D, we said, okay, D3, its technical term is cholecalciferol. And so they would put cholecalciferol in a gel that was kind of sweet, and they'd put it at the base of trees in New Zealand. Why? Because in New Zealand, somebody just managed to bring over a couple of possums, and since they had no natural enemy, now guess what they have a ton of? Possums. And so in order to kill possums, they literally have put at the base of all the trees these little containers that are totally open and have like a sweet jelly with tons of cholecalciferol in them. Now, these unwitting possums eat the vitamin D that's in this gel, and it causes their blood to flood with calcium, and therefore it stops their heart and they die. Yummy. I want that to sink in a little bit. Taking a lot of vitamin D will flood the blood with calcium. That can literally stop your heart. So, when you think about taking massive quantities of vitamin D, I want you to reconsider that a bit, and maybe perhaps ask your doctor a couple more questions before they want you to put on mega doses of vitamin D. So, with that said, I'm sure there's normal levels of vitamin D that are supposed to be in the blood. What that actually is, who's to know? What I would love is that they grow people in completely natural environments with enough sunlight, enough omega-3 fats, proteins that are not destroyed and charred beyond all recognition, vegetables that are grown, in good composted soil that are nutrient rich and microbes rich, and, fruits and vegetables, the whole gambit, whole grains, all of it. They exercise, they feel obviously really good, they're free of disease, and they start doing blood work on them. And say, we're going to assume that you're probably pretty close to normal. Now, most of the blood work that we run, we know optimals. Optimals are pretty easy to gather, but on vitamin D, it's one of those ones that I would love to test. What do Scandinavian people, what are their correct blood levels of vitamin D? What are African American correct vitamin D levels? What are Asians supposed to have correct levels? And even within the Asian community and the white community and the black community and, these different ethnicities, what are their normal vitamin D levels supposed to be? Because I'll bet they're different. I mean, let's just be completely honest. We have this society that's trying to totally get rid of all racial whatever. And okay, we don't have to call them races because ultimately we're the human race. Am I racist? Well, I guess if it's between me and the canine race, I choose the human race. Does that make me racist? I guess if you want to call me that, then I probably am. But when it comes to white, black, Asian, indifferent, brown, it doesn't matter. We're all one people. I don't really see color. I remember in college, I had a great friend, and I will call her black because she called herself black. And I remember one day she goes, "You're colorblind." I was like, I had no idea what she's talking about. I said, "What are you talking about, Deborah?" And she goes, "You don't see color." I'm like, "Of course I see color. I am wearing a blue shirt." And she laughed. She goes, "You're so colorblind, you don't even know you're colorblind." And that was my first experience at age 24 with somebody telling me that I was colorblind because I just saw people. And yeah, but it also, as a physician, I need to know what your ethnicity is because it actually makes a bit of a difference on your blood work. It makes a bit of a difference on what your normal food intake should be. Since I am part French, part Norwegian, part Swedish, my diet will be different than yours. I will react to foods different than yours. What your ethnicity and your background will be different, and you'll need to be a little bit more sensitive to that. And to wipe that away and say everybody's the same, we're going to feed everybody the same, is a bit short-sighted, to say the least. So, with that in mind, vitamin D, whatever D you want to call it, hormone D, I don't care. But at this point, I'm going to say be cautious with your amounts of D. If you were going to take it, I would say take it when your body would expect to receive it, and that is at noon. I wouldn't take a lot. Would I also take it with calcium? I would take it with calcium because that's what it's going to be doing in the system. It's going to be getting absorbed and stored with calcium and good fats. So might it be wise to take good fats like real butter if you're going to go be in the sun? it would be. And right now, here it is the end of May. We're recording this. We're getting ready to get all kinds of sun here in Washington State, and I'm so stoked for that. So if you're like me and you're hearing this and it's middle of June, you're like, I don't think I should be in the sun. I'm going to disagree, because the sun has been here as long as humanity has been here, and we adapted quite well to getting lots of sun, especially in the summertime. So, any questions, concerns about D? If I did not cover something, if you have something else that you heard or read, man, shoot it my way. Message me, email me. Love to talk about it here on the show. And until next time, I'm Dr. Troy Munson on Revealing Wholeness.
Thanks for listening. If you have any questions or comments, you can reach Dr. Munson at 360-893-8586 or email him at chiroman@dr.com. That's chiroman@dr.com. Check out our current workshop schedule on Facebook at Infinity Whole Health.
The information on this podcast from Dr. Troy Munson is meant to educate the listener on a variety of health issues. It is not meant to diagnose or treat any conditions.